Hello, good day everyone. All right, so for JavaScript today, it's not going to be a very long video at all. Basically, I want to talk a little bit about the project, the calculator, and then I'm going to do one exercise from Lab 8. When we get into Thursday of this week, I'm going to be able to go over the final exam, and I'll have some review exercises posted, and we can do a few of the exercises. So that'll be hopefully a longer lesson and video for you. So let's talk about the project. So basically, because we've had to now shift to this online learning, and I'm not able to work with you guys in person, that is a bit of a challenge. Normally when doing a project that's challenging, I'd be able to come into class and look over your shoulder and go through your code and be able to point out, issues you're having or maybe even provide suggestions on how to do certain things. And that's kind of been taken away. So what I encourage you guys to do is basically simulate that situation by sending me emails. And I've said this in previous videos, but as long as you can guide me to this is the area I'm having trouble with, or a specific question, then that'll make it much easier for me to read through and find the area in your code where you're having difficulty and come back with some suggestions. And please don't feel like awkward in sending me, like spamming me with a few emails here and there. I'm here to try to assist and help. So I think that's really a strategy you're going to have to use. If you're struggling a bit with the project, then craft an email, attach your source code, and in the email point out this is the difficulty I'm having, or I'm stuck here, or another one would be, why doesn't this piece of code work properly, okay? And then I can read it, go through, and quickly respond to that. Okay, so let's move on. So we posted the Lab 8 is up, and that's what you guys are going to work on this week. Of course, later in the week I will have, very shortly, I'm going to have more information on the final, what the format is, and I'll put some review exercises up that we can go through and practice doing to help prepare you. So let's go through now today. I just want to do, we'll just do one exercise. So looking at Lab 8 here, and the questions we have are short 6.2, short 7.1, and extra 7.2. So I figure the one I'll do is short 6.2. So to do that, I'm going to download the starter files here, and I'll unzip them. And we'll get these opened up in brackets. Okay, and then let's take a quick look at the instructions here for this exercise. Okay, so this is one we display test scores, and we use arrays. So I like this exercise because it practices arrays. As we know, being able to manipulate and understand and work with arrays is extremely important. It's a really good skill to have. So this exercise certainly does that. We add test scores to an array, and then we loop through the array and we display them in this text area in our document. Okay. So there's really only 4 steps here. The first one says open the HTML and JavaScript files. We've done that. It says run the application, enter a name and score, and click the add to array button. But you can't use the other buttons to display the scores. Okay. So there's really not much point in running it, but let's go ahead anyway. So we've got our HTML. We can click on the preview button here. Okay, this is what we get. So I can go in and I can click Eric, and I got a 78, and I click add to array, and supposedly that adds it to an array. Now display scores right now doesn't work, so we can't really verify that everything's working, and I'm guessing that's what we're going to be hooking up when we do this exercise. All right, so number 2 says, look at the JavaScript code to see it starts with a declaration of 2 arrays that contain 4 elements each. The first is an array of names, the second is an array of scores. Note too that the JavaScript code includes the $sign function, an onload event handler, and the add score function. for adding a name and score to the arrays. All right, so let's take a look. So we can see here at the top, we have two arrays declared. We have our names array and we have our scores array. After that, we have our $ function, and then we have an add score function. And this function here basically takes the values that were added from the text boxes. It does a little bit of error checking, so it makes sure that the values are not empty. It also makes sure that score is a number, and also it's between 0 and 100. And if it's not, then it prompts us to enter a valid amount. After that, if it is correct, then it comes in here and it adds those to the array, and it also resets the text boxes to be empty again. And then the last thing it does is it refocuses on the first text box. So quite a bit of code they gave us here, and this is hooked up to the add button. All right, so add on click is add score. All right. So let's move on to step 3. So it says here we need to add an event handler for the display scores button. And this event handler needs to display the names and scores in the array as shown above. You will also need to use the onload event handler to attach this function to the click event of the display scores button. After you test this with the starting array values that are shown above, add a name and score to the arrays and test the display again. So essentially, we're just going to add a event handler function, so a function expression that we can hook up to the click event for the display scores button. When we click it, we're going to output all of the names and the scores in the format that's shown in this diagram here. So this should be pretty straightforward. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create my function expression. So var display name and scores. And inside here, I'm going to, I need to basically create a string that I'm going to add each element in the array to. And I'm going to build it up so that it looks just like what we're seeing in this one right here. So where we have Ben equals 88, then we have a new line character, then we have Joel equals 98, then Judy equals 77, with new line characters between each line. So that's one string that contains all of that information. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to declare my variable. So var display string equals, okay. And now I'm going to loop through my arrays. So I'm going to go for let I equals 0, I less than names dot length. And I'm going to increment I. And I know that the length of the names array is going to be the same as the scores array, because for each name there has to be a score, and when I add them, I add to both. So at this point, I can go through and I can basically say display string plus equals. So I'm adding on to the string, and I'm going to add on names I plus. And I'm going to pass in an equal sign. Oops. And then I'm also going to put in the score. So scores I. So I'm indexing into the array and I'm grabbing the name and I'm grabbing the score. And I'm adding a equals character as a string, and then basically appending that onto my string variable display string. So once I've done that, it might be a good idea to do a console.log. All right, and that way I can at least see that I'm building up this string properly. So let's go back here and we'll hook up the click event handler, display name and scores, to my display scores button. So to do that, I need to look at the HTML, and I can see here that I have a button and it has an ID of display underscore scores. So I'll use that to get the element. So I'm going to go $ display underscore scores dot on click equals display name and scores. Okay, so we got that hooked up. So let's try running it and we'll see if we get anything. So basically I can come in here and I can hit display scores and I'll hit F12 Okay, we have an error right away. So test scores line 25. Okay, so I see right away I didn't declare my function properly. So display name and scores equals function. All right, save that and let's try again. So now I don't have my error. I can hit display scores and let's look at my console. There we go, okay? So in my console, I'm seeing Ben equals 88, Joel equals 98, okay? All of that stuff there. Now the only problem is I don't have any new line characters. So basically this is just being added as one big string. But we can come back and add that later. So let's now take this string and we'll place it inside our text area. So to do that, if I come in, inside my display name and scores, I need to use the $ function, and I'm going to get the element by ID that represents the text area where I'm going to place this text. So let's look at the HTML, and I can see at the bottom here I have a text area. It has an ID of scores_display. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to go back to my test scores, and I'm going to do $ test scores display dot value. And then what I'm going to set that to is display string. Okay. Now we've seen previously where say we have a div element, okay, or a span element, and it has a child which is a text element. In that case, we go firstChild.node value because we have to traverse the DOM tree to get the actual child. But in this case, we're talking about a text area. So the actual text that's displayed is an attribute of this element. So we don't have to do any DOM traversal. We can basically go .value and we set the text for that text area. So in this case, I go .value, I set it to display string, and let's try this out. So I go display scores, and there we go. So we're seeing that same string that I'm displaying in my console log. Now it's being displayed inside my text area. So there's really, the next step is pretty obvious. We need to add in a new line character. So instead of just adding to my string, the array elements separated by an equals character, I need to also, at the end of each of them, I need to also add in a new line character, okay? And I'll save that. And now when I hit display scores, there we go. I've added that new line character, and we can see both in my console log and what's displayed inside the text area. It's now pushing the new items onto new lines. Okay, so I might be done at this point. So let's see here. After you test this with the starting array values that are shown, add a name and score to the arrays and test the display again. So I'm pretty sure this is going to work because when we started this exercise, we were given code inside the function add score. This takes whatever values we enter in the name and score text boxes and it adds them to the corresponding arrays. So we can easily test this out. I can add in Eric, and I can come in here and I can say that I got a 78. I'm going to add that to the array. And now when I hit display scores, you can see there that my entry is added to that as well. So the last thing it says here is modify the event handler for the add to array button so the data in the text area is cleared after a name and score are added to the arrays. So that's very simple. Basically, I just need to grab the text area by ID, and then I can set the value equal to the empty string, and that will clear out the text area every time I add a new score. So to do that, I'm going to go into my add score function, and I'm going to go $ scores display dot value equals, okay, and I'm just basically adding on to the scores array here. And now when I run this, okay, I might not have saved it. Okay, there we go. So I can display my scores, and now when I come in and I type in Eric, I add my score, I add it to the array, okay, it clears out the text area. And then if I hit display scores, I'm gonna see the current state of the scores that have been added. All right, so that was a pretty straightforward, pretty simple exercise. So I'm basically going to stop here. So the work you guys have to do right now is finish up lab 8. I have a Dropbox open for that lab. In addition, work on your projects. If you're having difficulties with the projects, please email me. And as I mentioned, send me your code and point me in the right direction to where you're having the difficulty. Also, please go back and review some of the videos. If you're going to try to use my algorithm, where I have the original items array, and I also have the formula elements array, basically where I take the original formula elements as you enter the values, and the formula elements is the same array, except if you did a multiplication or division operation, I solve that as you go. If you're going to use that, then what I suggest is go back and watch those videos, because I walk through several examples of those. And also subdivide the problem. So get it working first using addition and subtraction, because that's a much easier problem. Once you have your calculator working with that, then go and solve the case where people are entering multiplication and division into the calculator. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. It's a pretty quick video today. So please work on your assignments and projects. And next video, we'll be going over the final exam and doing some review exercises. Okay, have a great day.